Our first scripture reading comes from Matthew. After Jesus' birth, which happened in Bethlehem of Judea during the reign of Herod, astrologers from the east arrived in Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the newborn ruler of the Jews? We observed his star as it is rising and have come to pay homage." At this news, Herod became greatly disturbed, as did all of Jerusalem. Summoning all the chief priests and religious scholars of the people, he asked them where the Messiah was to be born. "In Bethlehem of Judea," they informed him. "Here is what the prophet has written. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, since from you will come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Herod called the astrologers aside and found out from them the exact time of the star's appearance. Then he sent them to Bethlehem after having instructed them, "Go and get detailed information about the child. When you have found him, report back to me so that I may go and offer homage too." After their audience with the ruler, they set out. The star which they had observed at its rising went ahead of them until it came to a standstill over the place where the child lay. They were overjoyed at seeing the star, and upon entering the house, found the child with Mary, his mother. They prostrated themselves and paid homage. Then they opened their coffers and presented the child with gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. They were warned in a dream not to return to Herod, so they went back to their own country by another route. And from James, "Think of it as pure joy, my sisters and brothers, whenever you face trials of any sort. You understand that your faith is put to the test only to make you patient. But patience, too, has its practical results. It's to make you fully mature and lacking in nothing." So ends our reading. Ancient words from our tradition for today's present-day understanding.
Well, I want to repeat what Daniel said. In my line of work, the Sunday after Christmas and the Sunday after Easter are known as Death Valley days because typically it's fairly cavernous in the room after those holidays. So thank you so much for getting dressed and driving across town. I appreciate it. And we're coming to the close of our Advent series, our Christmas series. And I revealed more than I originally intended to, that at this time I have a great passion, a great tenderness in my heart for people who are activists in the current state of affairs, who don't let their hearts go to sleep, and who are heartbroken at many of the policies that are now commonplace, and the cruelties and the lies and all of that. And that can look like all kinds of things. I love visiting the Sloans. They're an elderly couple that's been in the church for a long time. And whenever we go to the retirement center where they live, on their car, there's a little sign on the side that says, "Bring the troops home." Now, it was for other wars when they first came up with that, but it still applies. I was talking after the first service to a woman who's a teacher, teaches English, and just talked about how hard it is to try to bring humanity into some of the conversations where the children are repeating cruelties they've heard at home. As far as I'm concerned, that's first crest of the wave activism. Because so much of what makes the world different isn't going to happen in the polls. Those are important. I believe in that. I work on that. That's what gets the attention. But America's the way it is because people are afraid and they don't have the tools to do democracy. They don't have the virtues that are necessary for democracy. It takes courage to have a country that's democratic, and we're afraid of our shadows. It takes justice, and we feel like we're special, privileged people kind of outside the scale that other human beings get weighed by. So those personal conversations, I think when we talk about Jesus, it's a spiritual thing, but you don't have to be Christian or religious to realize that in some ways, whatever you want to call it, the soul of humankind is being worked on right now. And fighting isn't going to do it. We have to heal some kind of a wound that's been in this country since the very beginning. So how do we do that? I think Christmas kind of tells us. Christmas is presented in a very ominous political situation. Herod is going to kill the children, is going looking for that. Now, if this is your first time at St. Andrews, Herod was the bad guy. Right, so when you look at America today, and you have somebody putting children in cages, that's the bad example. Right, that's what we're not supposed to be doing. But in the story, in the midst of all of that darkness and despair and danger, there is peace, joy, and love. The stories of Christmas, the songs of Christmas are the happiest in the whole year of Christianity. And the fact that they take place in such bleak times is intended to teach us that the world doesn't have to change before we can know peace and love and even joy. That's what I want to talk about today to conclude our series. I've been incredibly fortunate as an activist to live in Austin. I mean, when you drive down Old Torf and you can see Molly Ivins, in the restaurant, our favorite Mexican food restaurant, and Richards, people whose names you'd never hear in a million years, but were champions of human rights and gave their lives, I think, for us. But every one of them I ever worked with had a wicked sense of humor and had a joy that came from simply being human and having compassion and realizing people are worth more than money. So what we're talking about is remembering the importance of joy as we struggle, as we try to make the world better. The importance of not losing sight of joy. I don't know about you, but there were several years in there where The Daily Show was salvific for me. I would work at the Capitol during the day. I would see Governor Bush doing all kinds of mischief during the day, and then going on the news and say he hadn't done any of it. And it twisted my mind. Right, because when somebody says something one day and does something different the next day and says they didn't say the other thing, you start questioning your sanity. And it was The Daily Show with Jon Stewart that would go look up those tapes and play them back to back. Bush says he didn't say that. Here's him saying that. Do you remember that feeling? I'm not crazy. Or at least not for that reason. See, that's what demagoguery does. It gets you to question your own humanity, your own judgment, your own wisdom. When a president gets on the TV and lies back to back, and you know it's a lie, it talks about a crowd size, and you just look at the picture. That's intended to shut your mind down, to shut your heart down. And the wonderful thing is we don't have to fall for that. We can be fully loving, caring, wise, compassionate people without the world having to be transformed whatsoever. The activists I know take on the hardest causes so they don't win in their lifetimes. If something's too easy, they move ahead and go to the losing causes where it's really changing the foundation. But they don't forget that. They don't forget that that was a choice, that they could have taken an easier route. And they do it not so that they'll win a political struggle, but so they'll remain human beings. They do it so they can have a functioning human heart. And as I say, your health may not allow it, your temperament may not allow it, but in some way, shape, or form, almost all of us can change the world. Mahatma Gandhi called it satyagraha, the truth struggle. And for truth, he meant things like the heart. He meant things like life, humanity, nature, reality. That he said that the struggle is to remain a human being, to keep your heart alive, and to stay in touch with reality and to not fall into the lie. That sounds easy, but it's very hard. In times of brutality, it's very hard not to take up the lies of one's culture. They recently released a study on the Afghanistan war, and found that we've been lied to, which if you're my age, that's no big surprise, right? But back in the days of the Pentagon paper, people reacted to it. We had the same kind of information released and people just shrug. Right? The lie is so dominant that we just go asleep in it. Do you remember at 9/11, if you're old enough, and I guess on Death Valley Sunday, most of you are. But we were attacked by a plane full of Saudis, people from Saudi Arabia, one of the most repressive states in the world. But we couldn't take it out on them. Remember that? So we're told these stories about Iraq and about Saddam Hussein and how he's taking babies out of incubators. And that if you didn't support the attack on this innocent country, you didn't care about the babies. Do you remember that pressure? The pressure that was put on us. And then afterwards you find out there weren't babies. We were just lied to long enough to do that. And then, supposedly it's because they had supported 9/11 somehow, some way. The most important thing was they're Muslims, right? So we had to attack somebody, and they had to be Muslims, and then the country feels okay. So then, Saddam Hussein supposedly leaves that country, although he may not have even been in it, goes to Afghanistan. So now we're in a war in Afghanistan. We're still in the war in Afghanistan. And nobody knows why. Like they interviewed the leaders over there. They don't even know what victory would have looked like. But it was okay to attack them because supposedly that's where Osama bin Laden had gone. But he was really in Pakistan. It's crazy, right? And so now we're sending weapons to Saudi Arabia. So what can happen is you can go to sleep. Your heart can just not take it anymore. You can despair. Or you can go deeper. You can realize that you have within you what it takes to be a human being in these times. And that far from making you despair, caring about other people, staying connected to other people, even people on the other side of the world, feeling what is happening, gives you a strength and a power. Trying to play like it's not happened makes you numb. And you just cave in. So, today we're looking at a particular hymn. It goes, "Joy to the world, the Christ is come." This is my translation. The words will be a little different when we sing in a second. Joy to the world, the Christ is come. Let earth with justice ring. Let every heart prepare Christ's room. It's not in your bulletin, so if you're looking for it, I'll save you that possible paper cut. Joy to the world, the Christ is come. Let every heart prepare Christ's room, and heaven and nature sing. Now, the Christmas story, in my opinion, is mythic. I think if you went back 2,000 years ago, you would see a world that looks just like the one that you're living in, without basic cable. Right? There wouldn't be angels sitting on the roof. There wouldn't be people walking on water. It would look like your world. But people sang a sacred hymn at that time about this baby being born to symbolize how the sacred enters your life and my life in dark political times, in oppressive political times, how there can still be hope and joy in a time like that. It is so important to take it mystically, not literally. Daniel was talking about a rabbi being shot. When Christians in this season say that Jesus was born King of the Jews, do you feel the connection between that standard Christian tenet and the violence against Jews that have taken place for century after century? When we say that Jesus was the Messiah of the Jews, King of the Jews, and they didn't recognize it and they killed him, can you feel how arrogant that is? So we need to reframe that language. Jesus was Jewish. The biblical passages that are being quoted are Jewish. What they're saying is the real strength of Israel was in its wisdom, its kindness, and its justice. Jesus represents every human heart that becomes awakened, enlightened. There's nothing special about a Christian that isn't true of a Jewish person or an atheist or anyone else who has a loving heart. So when I talk about mystical symbolism, it's no small thing. Literal Christianity is a deadly beast. You feel it with your heart shuts down. Jesus said it's all fulfilled with love. If a passage doesn't take you to a loving place, you're not understanding it right yet. And what it's saying is that there's a difference between happiness and joy. Happiness is what happens to you. And it wouldn't be realistic for you to be happy in oppressive times. But joy is something that's different. Happiness is kind of an elevated spirit. Joy is a balance of the heart. It's a heart that's tuned to nature and to the creative process. That's what the stories of angels are about. It's the feeling people had when they were in tune with life and with nature, and they felt a song happening all around them. You've probably had that happen in your life, where you were so in tune that it felt like light was this euphoric gift, and that things just rang with a beauty about them. If you thought that was coming from outside of you in some kind of miraculous way, you may have never found it again. But if you knew it was because your heart was tuned, then even if you can't feel it on a given day, you know it's there if you get deep enough and calm enough, because you can't always feel joy. You just trust that's there in the background. The key is you tune yourself to the creative process. Violence is not a true power. When you look at history, the Roman Empire nobody could defeat it. But it was already turning on itself. It was already destroying itself. The American Empire, nobody can stand up against it. But we're turning on each other already. There's a division in the heart of this country that comes from being an empire. Because at some level we know, as long as we have an empire, every leader we have has to lie to us. Because we believe we're a democracy. Right? And if you're going to pull that off, then the leader has to lie to us. That's the job. So our hope has to come from a deeper place. A place that doesn't exclude people just because they're on the other side of a boundary line. And then we can love our country for what it is. Human beings are too smart for our own good. We've been able to think our way out of nature. And what that does is it opens us to fears and desires that cannot be satisfied. I loved, there was a quote that, I think it was D.H. Lawrence said. He said, "I never saw a wild thing sorry for itself. A small bird will drop frozen dead from a bough without ever having felt sorry for itself." Now, I don't know if that's true. I'm not really into bird psychology very deeply. Rollo May talked about the difference between joy and happiness. He said, "Joy rather than happiness is the goal of life. For joy is the emotion which accompanies our fulfilling our natures as human beings. It is based on the experience of one's identity as being of worth and dignity." I love that Christmas hymn that says, "And the soul felt its worth." Isn't that what you're really looking for? Not success by some external standard, but to feel the worth of your own soul. To get at that, you have to step out of any culture that you probably belong to and plug into the creative process of life itself, of the universe itself. That doesn't mean you have to go live with Smokey the Bear. You can live in a city, but your heart belongs to the whole universe. One of the passages we read said, consider it joy when you meet with struggles. And this is once you stop identifying with the story you were taught of who you are. See, before you ever began to think, people were already telling you who you were. And it was a social personality, not this larger natural being, not life incarnate, not a force of nature, which is who you truly are. It said when you experience difficulties, realize that's building courage in you. It's building wisdom in you. Because you could only learn courage in frightening times. Think about it. You can only learn wisdom in times when you're so confused you don't know what to do. But a lot of us don't realize that that's where the virtues come from. That's where that sense of self-worth comes from, through the struggle of life, through not giving up on ourselves, trusting ourselves, and knowing, and this is most important in the Christmas story, that love is a strength, it's a power. And when we talk about Jesus being king, that's what they mean. Jesus wasn't king of the Jews. But love is strength, love is power. I love the line in our hymn today where it says, "God rules the world with truth and grace." If you want to know why it looks like a mess, that's why. God isn't a king sitting on a throne controlling everything. So if you wake up one day and have a cancer diagnosis, you don't have to figure out what you did to make that happen. Right? There's nobody at the wheel when it comes to that kind of thing. But there is help, and there is hope, and there is meaning. We just have to go deeper. So it says, God rules the world with truth and grace, not with power, but with truth and grace. Over time, it becomes clear. Over history, you see no empire lasts forever. And they turn on themselves and they destroy each other. But the great artists give a gift that lasts always. And it says, God makes the nations prove. The word prove in Older English meant to test, to bring out, to authenticate. So when it says the exception proves the rule, that means it tests the rules and takes a deeper understanding of it. But what it's saying is when you look at a situation like Afghanistan, when you look at a situation like the border of the United States right now, those are apocalyptic signs in the Bible. Those are signs of a dying culture that either needs to change how it views things and does things, changes how it is, or it will fall. which is not bad news, unless you think you're just an American. But what Jesus is saying is you are a force of nature. You are the light of the world. You are a cosmic event. And every being on this planet is a part of your family. Human, yes. Animal, yes. Plant, yes. And you feel that at times of joy. That's never separate from joy. The interconnectedness and joy are never fully separate. And that's why this Christmas, when we had the family in Sanctuary, Ilda and Yvonne, Christmas was so real to us. Because we had the Holy Family living under our roof, running from Herod. It was real clear where our allegiances needed to be. It was real clear what our story needed to be. We needed to join people like the Sloans, who from the retirement center call for justice and hope. We need to be like that teacher who looks for little cracks to teach young people what it means to have a human heart and have human aspirations and human values. I'm sure you were doing that in some way, shape, or form. What our lesson today says is to realize that's where your joy rests. That's where that sense of self-worth comes from solidarity with human beings. And believe it or not, joy is the thermostat that tells you you're on the right path. You can't always feel joy, but that's when you're doing it right. When it feels like a burden, it exhausts you, it's tiring you, that's not your calling. There will always be a kind of wicked joy when you're with your cronies working for a better world. You'll always feel a mischievous quality to it. And you'll carry that joy with you as a result of your lifestyle. You can't change the world, but when it says joy to the world, the Christ has come, the world was the same before that verse and after it, right? Herod ruled before and after. Rome ruled before and after. The difference was people recontextualized their lives and their stories. Because domination no longer rules in my heart. Terror no longer rules in my heart. That the Christmas revelation is without the world changing externally. The love that I'm looking for, the hope that I'm looking for, the justice that I'm looking for in the world can start in my heart today. I have to say yes to the creative process and choose that over violence and domination. And to realize that creativity is where life exists. Domination and violence are already dead. They may seem invincible, but they will go the way of the dinosaurs. When your heart is in tune with the creative process, when you've said yes to creativity, you will hear a tune being sung all around you. It's there all the time, but your heart isn't in tune with it. When your heart's in tune with nature, with life, with your values, it will be like there are angels on the roof. And these words will be things that you live. Joy to the world, the Christ is come. Let earth with justice ring. Let every heart prepare Christ's room, and heaven and nature sing. Christ rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of Christ's righteousness and wonders of Christ's love. Let me close with a kind of benediction that Molly Ivins used to give. I wish I could share those years of, those powerful, wicked women that were shaking up the world, in Texas anyway. So this is a benediction she used to give us. So keep fighting for freedom and justice, beloveds. But don't you forget to have fun doing it. Let your laughter ring forth. Be outrageous. Rejoice in all the oddities that freedom can produce. And when you get through, be sure to tell those who come after how much fun it was. I invite you now to your own reflection on these words.